Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Swivl orientation training. This will be one of many to come. We're here today to show you an overview of what Swivl's video collaboration looks like, and we're going to first start with a video. But before we start playing that video, like always, we have attendance. So attendance will be put into the chat feature for everybody in just a second, and that link is good for the duration of the training. Today's training is going to go, we'll have a short video for you to get an overview of Swivl. We'll go through some presentation key points, and Stephanie Cole and myself will go through those for you, and so that you can see screenshots and written documentation of the step-by-step of how to use Swivl. Later on, we'll also go through some Apple components with the iPad, such as your Apple ID. And then we'll always give you further training coming through in the 2021 year. Let's begin. So in just a few seconds, go ahead and finish filling out your attendance link, and we'll go ahead and start that video momentarily.
Good afternoon, guys, and welcome back from Thanksgiving break. Hope that you had a restful, short little break. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the purpose in this particular training was to go over the basics of the device um, itself and make yourself familiar with it. Any documentation that we share today will be inside of our Canvas course that Lisa's going to talk about shortly. But what my part is for today is to talk about the actual pieces that are involved with the Swivl. Um, and we'll get started with looking at the setup. Now, for most of our school sites, they are going to be utilizing the iPad for the actual, um, you know, remote learning or hybrid learning that's going to take place. So, with that being said, the iOS is the system that we will be utilizing as far as the iPad itself. Now, when we take a look at the Swivl suite components that are inside of the Swivl itself, we have the Swivl C series robot, which is on the slide you currently see. There may be depending on what your school ordered, the regular C series or the C3 series. But that is technically an iPad sitting on the robot itself. And then we'll talk about the markers that are located or come with it, depending on what was ordered. Next, you have your Swivl app, which will have to be downloaded in order for the robot to actually function like it's supposed to. And then, depending on if your school purchased the Pro, you have Swivl Teams platform. That is a platform where the capability of recording, editing videos inside of Swivl itself. So, not sure what schools actually paid for that Pro, which was $75 per user for a year. So, I'm not sure that hard with talking about the actual live stream app that we are going to use, which is still Google Meet. We are not changing up from Google Meet. That is what we are supporting. You'll see on the slide that we've crossed out Zoom. We are students do not have the functionality of utilizing Zoom. Microsoft Teams, it is compatible. We're not using Microsoft Teams. So what we will use across the district is still continuing to use our Google Meet with Swivl. So let's get to know the device itself, the robot. One of the first things on the next slides is adjusting the grip inside of your actual robot itself. So once that slide comes up, we'll talk about taking a hold of the grip. There's a gripper inside of it, which technically grabs the hold of your iPad. That is what your iPad will sit in. So you can adjust that depending on the size of the iPad that's sitting inside of that actual area itself for the base. The next part is talking about the ports, the robot ports, and the backside of the actual Swivl robot. This is where you will connect your mobile device, and there's arrows for that. You'll see your charging base there, and you'll also see the capability to add the USB cable, and we'll talk about those as we progress through the actual training. On the next slide, we see it talks about our LED lights that are there are indicators of whether you have a solid red light or a green light. Now, if we have a solid red light, that means there's no marker connection. So the marker is technically what you as the teacher will hold in order for the audio and the actual robot to move and connect with you as you're moving about the classroom, and you'll see that shortly as well. Your green light technically means that your mobile device, such as your iPad, is successfully connected. When we talk about both green lights, that's actually what you want to be working at the same time. You want to have a green light on the left side as well as the right. That means your marker is connected as well as your mobile device, your iPad is connected. And this will be the same for whether you have the C model, C3 model, or the C5 model, depending on what your school actually chose. Now, on the next slide, we'd start to discuss, and you can actually see what technically goes on when the lights are flashing there. That's red lights, so that means there's no connections taking place there. So you may have to switch on and off your power to make sure that's right. Now on our next slide, we're talking about the charging and the battery life. Now for your actual robot itself and your markers, there's a charge for 4 to 6 hours. We would suggest to you that each day you put those markers away in a safe place because that is technically the functionality of the robot itself, to be able to pick up where you are and actually the audio as well. So those could get missing. The next slide is checking the battery status. If you needed to check to see inside of the app itself, where would I go to check my battery life? Inside of the app, you're going to go to the robot settings, and you'll be able to see the base battery life as well as the marker battery life. So you'll be able to see both of those in that Swivl app under the robot settings. Now, when we check the battery status, you have on the back side of your actual Swivl itself. We'll move to the next slide. The marker charging status, which is on the far left-hand side, and then you have your base charging status. So you can see both of those as well. Included on this screenshot is actually the status of each. If you have a flashing red light, what does that mean? If it's flashing green, if it's solid for the marker itself, or vice versa. What happens on my base charger if it's flashing red? So this will, this presentation will be given to you inside of Canvas. That way you'll be able to refer back to it to know, okay, what's going on with my base charging if it's flashing green. Now, the next thing we want to look at is charging the Swivl base itself. So you can notice here that on the back side of it, you do have the capability underneath the bottom to actually charge it itself. So that would actually need a charge daily to be able to function that 4 to 6 hours. After that, we talk about charging the Swivl markers themselves. You want to first charge the base, and you want to always make sure that you charge your markers. There will be chargers available to be able to charge both, the base itself, the robot, as well as your markers. Now let's talk about those markers for a second. When we talk about the markers, depending on what type of kit your actual, again, your school site purchased, you do have markers, which is called primary markers and secondary markers. Your primary marker is your marker. That is the teacher's marker. It is black. And we'll discuss a little bit more in detail as we go through this. Your secondary markers, they have colors on them. So you may have an orange, blue, purple, and green as demonstrated here. Those are technically placed around the classroom so that it can capture the student audio that's going on during the hybrid learning. You'll notice you have a lanyard, you have a marker chip, as well as wristbands. Now the wristband is where those will be used for your secondary markers. You as the teacher would use the neck lanyard. As far as your marker features, we'll go briefly over this. You have a power button on the side of it. You have a record, start and stop. You also have your audio jack charging port. That's where you'll plug in the power cord to charge it. On the front of it, you have your center button. It's kind of like one of those Fire Stick remotes. If you have a Fire Stick, you have that center button for your pause. You have your left and right navigation and your up and down. And then, of course, at the bottom, you have your microphone that can technically be able to hear you. As far as being able to pause and resume, all you technically would do would be press that center button in the center of that marker. Primary marker, again, being the teacher marker. It is all black, no color on it. Now, moving over to that primary marker, like I said before, it's always black. It tracks the teacher. It is the teacher's microphone, in other words. It can control the robot or the swivel movement, and it does control those secondary markers as well. So extremely important for you to keep up with that actual primary marker. Over on the side of your primary marker is indicated by 2 green lights. That lets you know that things are connected and they're working the way that they should be working over on the side. Now, if you have 2 red flashing lights, that's an indication of a low battery, or your base needs to be updated with the firmware. Okay, we'll talk about firmware in a little bit. That's technically uploading what should be. It's kind of like updating your Chrome browser. When an update's needed, you'll have to do that. Now, for your secondary markers, let's talk about those for a little bit. They collect the audio in the classroom, and you'll notice that they have colors indicated by 1 green light. That means 1 green light will be showing. Your primary marker will have 2. The secondary markers have 1. They do not track the robot, which means they do not cause the movement between the robot. They're only for audio. And you can gain microphone through the Swivl app settings to be able to adjust those. Not going to go over that. That's just looking at the difference between the 2 different series of robots. So let's transition over real quickly to the muting. There is a way to mute, and you always want to learn how to do that, that you can mute your primary and secondary markers. You're going to firmly double click on the red button, and you can see that, which is down below your green ones, and they will all be muted, okay? And then they're flashing while they're in mute mode. So as long as you see it flashing, you know. To unmute it, you again are going to firmly double tap that again, and it'll go to a straight green light. Okay, connecting the robot. Let's talk about connecting the robot to the actual iPad itself. You'll see on the screen that we are using, okay, iOS, again, for our iPad. You'll see the connector there that will come. That's the lightning cable. You do see at the bottom where we have an adapter. An adapter would be if you did not have the lightning cable. So if you are used to seeing a Mac, just going to talk about an example right here so you can understand. You know how some Macs, they don't just automatically connect to your smart board or to other devices. You technically have to have what's called a dongle. So you have to have an extra piece. So that piece, that adapter would be to support you there for that. In order to turn it on for the power button, you're simply on the right-hand side going to click that and power it on, which means it becomes green. You're then going to go to your iPad, which is connected, and you will get a pop-up screen, and you'll click allow because you're allowing the robot access to your iPad. You're going to go then to your marker and press that power button on. That's in the center on the side. Now, you will get prompted whenever you power this on, whether you need to do when you power your iPad up or select the robot to access. You will see a screen if you need to do a firmware update, and that technically means the version needs to be upgraded. And all you will do is simply click upgrade update, and it will complete that function for you. You'll see the next screen what that actually looks like. The process will go to 100% once it's updated. And then you will have that capability of doing the functionality connecting with the live stream through your Google Meet. Lisa is going to take over at this point and discuss live streaming with the actual Google Meet app itself.
Hello, everybody, and we're going to talk about live streaming with Swivl. On the first slide that you'll see, we're going to talk about specifically integrating audio. So what we're going to do is go through how integrating audio and Google Meet are going to talk to each other, and we'll make sure that you understand it, as well as there will be screenshots here as well. So here, where we have our red box around this one area for integrated audio, it's talking about broadcasting the remote student audio using the computer, your computer speakers, your interactive display such as your either ClearTouch or your smartboard, and then using the components of the USB-A cables and then attaching it to the robot itself. Some schools may have the capability of the Swivl link, which is right underneath this red box, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But essentially, the Swivl link makes it where there's not as many cords using the USB-A cable. So next we have is live streaming with Google Meet using that integrated audio. And the first thing that we're going to show you is how the setup is going to look. So on the next slide, you'll see that it has a laptop connected using that USB-A to the robot itself. And then you have the Swivl standing on an actual Swivl stand. The robot is sitting there and is connected directly to the iPad. On the next slide, it's going to talk about what's required. And I love this screen just for the fact of it tells you exactly what you need to make this function. So we have the Swivl robot that's sitting there. And I love the arrows because it tells you specifically what we have. We have the lightning cable. We have the black cord, which is your USB-A cable to cable. We have your laptop, whether it's a Mac or a PC, this will function. You have the floor stand, which is that long black area that the robot sits on. We do have that adapter USB cable just in case the USB-A to A is not working for your laptop. And then you have your iPad. And remember, with your iPad, you will need an Apple ID, and Cole will go through the Apple ID process at the end of this presentation for you. Just so if you missed it earlier, he will go through it again. Next, after that, we have the live stream. So live streaming using Google Meet, you have the Google Meet icon as well as the Swivl app. For the first time, when you begin to set up your Swivl, or if you're using your Swivl link, which is that link that uses instead of the USB, this is your wireless connection where it will connect to the front of the robot. It is called Swivl Link, and it will do the same configuration in finding the actual Swivl app on the iPad as well as the computer. So here in this slide, you have the USB-A cable. On the left-hand side, if you're using the USB-A to A in connecting to the robot and the laptop, as well as on the right-hand side, you have the laptop and the Swivl Link, which is a wireless connection to the robot. Next, after that, it shows the back and the front, like Stephanie explained before, but this is now in conjunction with Google Meet so that it sort of brings two and two together. So when you have the iPad sitting on the robot itself, you're going to press and hold down that power button to turn the robot on, and it shows you the front and back there so that you can really see it. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to click the button Allow to allow the robot to access the iPad. You're going to do the same thing in the sense of turning your markers on and pressing the power button. And then lastly, if there's any firmware that is necessary, and we've put those versions of firmware there for you, you will definitely want to update it to make sure that everything is up to date on that iPad for you. Now, from the teacher computer, and you see that we have it in bold because you're going to have two steps here. You're going to have your teacher computer, and you're going to launch a Google Meet session that we're all familiar with. And it shows here that there is a session ready to roll. Then from there, inside your Google Meet settings on the teacher computer, you're going to go to settings. And when you click on settings, you're going to select the Swivl audio. This is really important because what we want to do is make sure that the Swivl audio is there and ready and selected so that the markers and the robot pick you up as you're walking around and doing your teaching. However, keep in mind on the video side of this, on your computer, you are turning the video off. And when you turn the video off, keep in mind you can still screen share because you're using two devices. So keep that in mind. Next, we have when you have the iPad and you open it, you're going to open up the Swivl app. And from that home screen, you're going to click on Google Meet. Now, understand there's going to be other options such as Zoom and Hangouts and Microsoft Teams, but the PSRC is supporting Google Meet, and that's what we have highlighted here for you. On the next slide, here we are. We have Swivl. Remember your selection for the next time, which is awesome, so that you do not have to go through this process over and over again. It does remember the app as a default, and you can then select Google Meet again if, in fact, you have any issues, you know where to go. Lastly, joining the Google Meet session you started on your teacher computer is now by you putting your code in on the iPad so that both sessions are joined together. Next, we have muting the microphone on the iPad. For the Google Meet session, you're going to turn that device speaker down. Okay? Then next, you always have the option for a headset with the microphone. And like always, there's a Swivl Help Center. Inside that Swivl Help Center, you have the capability to put in a ticket if, in fact, there is a problem with what is going on. It gives you step-by-step instructions here by how to submit a request. Clicking on the Help little bubble, putting your school or work email address, the type of subject keyword that you may need help with, and a brief description, and how to contact you. And that's essentially it for now. So as we move forward with Swivl, we know a few things. One, we know the devices are coming in mid-January, and that we know a Canvas course is being developed for Swivl training or further training and updates and will be forthcoming. I'm going to turn over to Cole so he can re-go through the Apple ID section.
Good afternoon, everybody. We had some technical issues, I guess, with my microphone. I don't think you could hear me earlier. Stephanie and Lisa could hear me, but I don't think you guys could. So I just put in the chat the link to the Apple support article that I'm referencing here about how to create an Apple ID. So again, this is going to be a prerequisite, a requirement for using the Swivl devices with iPads. You've got to have an Apple ID so you can download these apps to the device. Many of you probably already have them. If you don't, this document will walk you through how to create one, and there are ways to do it without putting in billing and credit card information, which I know many of you probably do not want to do. The historical way on how to do that would be basically open up the App Store on an iPad and try to download any app that you're not currently logged into with an Apple ID, and it will prompt you to create one. And as part of that creation process, you will see a none option when it comes to billing information. That process should still work. There have been some changes over the years and it might look a little different. This tells you how to do it, whether you're setting up an Apple ID on a phone, on an iPad, or whether it's on a computer or even on a Windows machine. This article basically covers every possible avenue that you could try to create an Apple ID. There's a specific section in here that talks about, yes, credit card and billing information. There's a couple of hyperlinks there that are coming up so that if you don't see the none option or if it's grayed out and you don't select it, check out those hyperlinks under option 6 toward the top of this document. They tell you why that might happen and ways that you can get around that or try to correct it. In some limited scenarios, there may be no way to get around that and you may be forced to put in a billing information with including a credit card. But if worst case scenario, if you have to do that, Do it to complete the setup process, and as soon as you finish setting up the accounts, just immediately log back into the Apple ID and remove the billing information. It will allow you to do that, but in some rare instances, it may require it to be there before it will allow you to finish setting up that Apple ID. Many schools have these devices and teachers are familiar with them. Student devices are using mobile device management, the Jamf Pro mobile device management system within the district. We do not currently use that to manage staff devices. So traditionally the staff devices are just managed by the teacher using their own work email address, or in some rare instances, a personal email address to log into the device to put their apps on it. But please reference this document. If you have any questions, obviously just please reach out to us. As we've said earlier, these devices are expected to arrive mid to late January. You will need an Apple ID before these devices get here so that you can use them. If you wait up until the last minute, you'll have to, one more step you'll have to do when they get here. So I would go ahead and try to do it ahead of time if you don't already have one. And just more information is forthcoming, and I'll turn it back over to Stephanie and Lisa. Thank you.
Before we end, we just wanted to make sure that in the chat we have left that Apple support for where Cole is put in there for the Apple ID, as well as we have the attendance link sitting there for you. So please make sure you sign in. Again, there will be a Canvas course being developed for Swivl, and it will be forthcoming later on in January. But other than that, we hope you have a great day.